Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast.
Two women with 50 years plus of marketing
Integrity
experience.
and culture are extremely important.
You can still say, I don't know.
Stop multitasking and be present in the moment.
Moms have balls, big time.
Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. We are two women with more than 50 years of marketing and advertising experience between us, and we want to talk about the struggles, the fails, and the wins that we experienced while building our careers, being a boss, juggling work and a home life, and arguably the hardest and yet most fulfilling job, being a mom. This podcast was created for marketing and advertising professionals, especially the up-and-coming marketing stars of the future. We hope these tips, tricks, and advice will help you navigate work and life and get ahead.
Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. This is episode 40 called Motherhood and Ambition with special guest Sara Madera. After leading organizations and departments across the globe, Sara became a career coach for working moms after realizing the favorite part of every job was helping her teams realize their goals. A naturally good listener and a mother of two, Sara enjoys helping working women thrive at home and at work while still finding time for themselves. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Happy to have you. Let's dive right in. Working moms is such a strong niche. How do you decide to become a coach for working moms?
Yeah, I have been an executive coach for a few years, just sort of helping out and coaching people a little on the side of my daytime communications job. But it was really during the pandemic that it hit me, in terms of like working moms who are already so busy, had these really full plates, were then asked to become teachers and nurses and researchers and all the things overnight. And of course, at some point they decided, oh my gosh, I can't do all of this. And they started leaving their jobs, the she session, because they said, I can't quit my job as a parent. So something has to give. It will be my, be my paying job. And as I saw this happening, I was like, wow, not only was I going through it myself with my two little kids, really too young for Zoom class to make any difference, that I was like, hey, I have the tools that can help, and let me talk to my people. And these are definitely my people as other working moms.
So I hadn't heard the term she session before. What does that mean?
So, we've heard of the Great Resignation, but if you look at the numbers in terms of who was actually leaving, it was so many of the people who were leaving were women. And I don't know her name. I'm so sorry, but there was a researcher who coined the phrase she session because it was mostly women who were leaving their jobs. And it was such a significant number that eventually companies did set up and start taking notice that, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And how can we actually support this population?
I see. So speaking post-pandemic, in a post-pandemic world, what sort of trends are you seeing in the workplace for moms? I mean, for myself, my kids are teenagers. My oldest just graduated from high school and is going to college, and my youngest is going to be a sophomore in high school. So I'm in a completely different world than you are with much younger children. So my worldview is different. So tell me, what are you seeing out there?
It's so interesting. It feels like in the last few years, we've made such dramatic change. I won't, and even progress, really, that in 2021 and 2022, even a lot of high-level women, CEOs, prime ministers were leaving their positions. They were like, I need more balance. I need to be able to commit more, and I can't be stretched this way. I want to do different things. And at the same time, women's entrepreneurship was increasing. In 2022, women made up 47% of U.S. entrepreneurs starting new businesses, as compared to 29% before the pandemic. So there was really this story, I think, becoming clear that with the current workplace was not working for women. And so they were going outside of that. They were leaving in order to create their own thing, that they were like, I can create a structure that works better for me than what is currently available. And I'm starting to see that start to shift a little bit, kind of going the end of 2022 and end of 2023. It's not big, but still there are more female CEOs now than there were. So in 2023, it's at 10%, up from 8%.
From 8, yeah.
Okay, not huge, but still. It's progress. And that we're starting to see reports, really honestly, super recently, maybe in the last couple of weeks, even, that women are starting to return to companies now, because companies have become more aware of the needs that these women have, that these employees have, and are willing to be more flexible. They're like, we need women in the workforce. What can we do to bring them back? Which is really interesting. And, again, this trend, it's just the beginning of it. So we're just starting to see this change, but it is interesting to see and interesting to note. And interestingly for me as well, that younger women as well are starting to approach me and come to me, and because they're already thinking about in their 20s before they're married, before they're having kids, to say, how do I set up my career and my life so that I can be successful, still, have my ambition, and, maintain my career while still being the mom I want to be. So I think that's so interesting too. And I'm just so fascinated by this, next group, this next generation, and to see where they take these trends and where these things go.
Yeah, that was surprising to me when we talked about that earlier, because I certainly didn't plan ahead in any way, shape, or form. So I think it's great that women are starting to think about it. What is the best way? Do you have kids earlier, or do you wait and have kids later? And I think to a certain extent, kids come when they come, right? You can't plan everything. And so it's a matter of kind of setting yourself up for the most success so that you can not necessarily take a step out, but, at least keep your foot in the door in some way, shape, or form while you are continuing to be a mom. And there's many ways to do that. So let's talk a little bit about your career as your role as a career coach for working moms. So where do you start? How do you begin with working moms? What do you do first?
So almost always I find that we really need to articulate what it is, what's important to them, and what is their version of success, because there can't be a one size fits all, because what success looks like to you and what success looks like to me might be totally different. So we have to really make sure that we're clear about what that is. And interestingly, I'm hearing more and more of this phrase, instead of, the corporate ladder, that, our careers are more of a jungle gym, and that is no longer what people are looking to do, is to do one corporate ladder and straight, it might look like many different things, which I think is so interesting. And I love that exploration. So once we figure out what that is, we make a plan and we make that happen. I will say I started off when I became a career coach for working moms. I thought the conversation would be about balance. I feel like that's so often the conversations I had, with my friends and with colleagues about, oh my gosh, I have so much to do between like my workload and my home load, and like, how can I manage all of these tasks? And especially, and I think as my kids are now both school age, they're 6 and 8, that has started to make a bit of a shift. And those conversations about balance are not as much about the tasks, but about that ambition and like what I really want to do and how I'm going to spend my time, in contrast to the kind of mom I want to be. And so that is so interesting, this sort of shift. It's still about balance, and some of the tools are still the same, but the conversations are a little bit different, which I think is really interesting. I would say my flagship program now is Unleash Your Passion. And it's really about finding that role, that career that lights you up, that makes you excited, and so that you can feel successful at work, at home, at life, and with your family, because you have something that excites you and that you love. I have 2 stories, if you don't mind, of women who I worked with on this. And one of them is Ashley. She came to me shortly after the birth of her first kid, and she had worked mostly in agencies, and then a startup. But she realized she wanted to be home for dinner every night and be able to shut her computer at, 5:00, and then not be able to think about work, so that she could be present with her family. And so when she came to me, she was like, I think that this means I'm going to have to take a step back. I think it just means I'm going to have to take whatever I can get. And I just, it's just going to be lower level, and lower her expectations. But through our work together, she found out that actually being more specific, and really understanding what it was that she wanted was actually going to help her land a job even faster and get something that she loved. And so through our conversation, she decided, yes, I do still love marketing. I still love creative. I want to do this. And so she decided that she wanted to find this kind of role in-house, similar to a role that she had done previously. And actually, she found a job. She just landed earlier this year in a job that she absolutely loves. And it's so I spoke to her recently, and she had just hit her 3-month time period at this new role. And she is making such a huge impact at this job and being so successful already, because she knows what her strengths are. She knows where she can make an impact. She knows what she needs to do. And she is just like thriving and doing amazingly at this company. So she is, and yeah, she's amazing. I say that, I'll say that about everybody I'm probably,
Of course.
all my clients, because each of them are amazing in so many ways. And the second one is Roxanne. She works during the day as an educator, and her side hustle is a fitness business, that she specifically is a trainer for women. And she really wanted her side hustle to become her main focus and her main career. And so we were talking about how to do that. And when we put her goals up against how many clients it would take to reach that goal, she realized, oh, like that's not really possible. And I need to raise my prices, right, in order to achieve what she wanted. So she steadily started increasing her prices, and just in the fall, launched her website with new offerings. And in a year, she has more than doubled her side hustle income without working more hours. So really just having this shift in mindset really made a huge impact for her. And, we're continuing to like build that up every year as she, works to make this her full-time gig. So she is also amazing. And I'm so proud of her. So those are my two main programs. I also have a welcome back program for those who are managing that transition of working motherhood. So maybe coming back after maternity leave, or maybe it's a career break if you took a few years off for kids, or maybe you had a COVID baby and you haven't actually gone to the office since you had a kid. And so managing that is different. That commute and that, those hours away is different. So that is one of the programs. It's actually a group program so that the women can work together and, really understand and feed off each other and help each other out. And then one of those secrets about me, or I don't know, not a well-kept secret maybe, is that I have lived all over. My kids were born in Hong Kong. We lived in China. We lived in Singapore. We lived in Mexico. Now we live in a new part of the US, new to us. And so kind of building on that experience of keeping up my career and having different kinds of careers across both the US and across the globe, I created a Move to Success program. So if you are moving across the US, across the globe, and maybe you're the trailing spouse, it's, you're not moving for your job, but you still want to have your career, we can talk about how to do that. I have crazy amounts of experience doing this, so I'm always happy to share. But across those programs, always, the first thing we start with is being clear about what's important to you, really identifying those values. And this is so no matter which program it is, whether Unleash the Passion, Welcome Back, Move to Success, any of them, that we really identify 3 to 5 key words or phrases that articulate you. And we do this for a few areas. So we start with your core values, and it's kind of, they won't go across all parts of your life. And then we do the same 3 to 5 words or phrases for your personal values, your professional values, your family values. Maybe we might add on another one, relationship, financial health. If one of those is important to you, but the main ones, the core, personal, professional, and family are really those main ones. And this becomes really helpful in terms of not only decision-making. So like for us, this summer, it really helped us make a decision. Like, do we want to stay at home this summer and do camps, or do we want to try to make our 5-week trip to Colorado work? And I thought, one of our family values is adventure. So why don't we make this work? It's worth the time and effort because this is something that's important to us. But I also think it's really helpful in terms of being intentional. So if you are about to walk into a meeting or a Zoom meeting at work, whatever that may look like, you have those values. You might think, okay, I want to be articulate. I want to be connected, and I want to be what's another good professional value? I want to learn. Right. So you think about those 3 values before you walk into that room. So it helps you sort of embody that, that professional person that you want to be. But then when you go to walk into a room with your kids, maybe it's about being connected. Maybe it's about fun, and maybe it's about adventure, like in our family. Right. And so you think about those before you walk into a room. So those can also help in terms of making those transitions. Right. Because sometimes it's hard to go from being a boss or an employee to being a mom to then back, and making those switches. Sometimes thinking and articulating those values before you step into that room or step into that moment can really help make those transitions.
I am absolutely going to do that exercise today because I think it's a good one, and I'm excited to see where my circles lie, and hopefully they're in the right place. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. I can even send you. I have a document that can help you with
please do. Yes, please do.
I will.
So let's talk a little bit about balance. balance is a huge part of what we talk about in this podcast. It's a huge part of motherhood. It's a huge part of parenting. How do working moms find equity at home, equity and balance at home?
So this has been such a big topic for me this year. I've just been thinking about it so much. I mean, obviously, with working moms, we talk about this, but I will say that this year I was thinking, am I limiting myself? Are we not progressing the conversation by not including men in this conversation, by not talking about working parents versus working moms? And so, I was like, I was thinking through this, I was debating, I would ask people, what do you think about this? And it was so interesting. The answers I got back definitely fell around two lines. So most of the older women I said, no, stay with, working moms, because there's still so much work to do. There's women still need, all the support and help that we can get. And younger women were like, whatever, like they were much less committal about it. They didn't feel the same need or pressure kind of behind it. I think that some, the older women had experienced. And so in the end, after much debate, I researched and I saw that, really women are still doing more at home, right? That men have 3.5 times more leisure than their wife, while women are spending 2 more hours on caregiving and 2.5 more hours on housework per week. So men have more leisure, women are doing more work, right? And I was like, okay, so fair enough, older women, we are not yet there. And so, this happened to us as well when we moved back to the US about a year ago, and we were figuring out, my husband and I were figuring out, how do we manage these tasks? How do we, how does this, how does this balance look for us in our household? And it was challenging. It was really tough. I read Fair Play, which is amazing, by Eve Radosky. And I was like, what do you think about this? Should we try this? My husband was like, okay, sure. Why not? Let's try this. And it did not work for us. As well meaning and well-intentioned as he was in it, it just didn't, it was about meal planning, and I usually did the meal planning, he did the cooking, and he wanted to take on meal planning. It did not work. We crashed and burned. And so I was like, okay, let's go back to focusing on our strengths, and like what it is that we actually enjoy doing, and break this up in a different way. And so I tried that out for ourselves. We focus on strengths-based. And then I started testing it out on clients, and that really, it became a new program for me called Homework, 2 words. So to really talk about this, this topic about equity at home, because I talk to women all the time who are like, oh yes, my husband helps a lot, right? He helps a lot, or he does a lot more than my father ever did. And which again, that's
not saying much.
Not probably a low bar, right? So it definitely, it kind of just built over time. And even for the clients I have who say their husbands help a lot, even in terms of talking about it, yes, they might be doing some of the physical labor, but in terms of the social or the emotional, there are other pieces that they're definitely, they're not the same level of support. So this new program sort of came out of all of that, and that learning and, testing. And so, in terms of if you want to do this at home and, start these conversations, sort of three tips in terms of how to start. And one is sort of the same to the individual programs in terms of values and visioning, right? So of course, in a marriage, there's 2 individuals who come together, right? And so of course, let's represent that, right? Of course, we each have our own set of values, but also what are the family values, right? Where do we come together for a shared vision? And that shared vision is what those shared values, and then the vision will really help us talk about what is it that we're working towards, right? And then what do we want it to be? And what would each person do with found time? And often in hearing that, the other, one or the other spouse can be like, oh, wow, I didn't know that you wanted to paint or, do something else. And then can become really supportive. Yes. Okay. I'm happy to take over doing the dishes so that you can do that, and there starts to become a much more, understanding and appreciative place that they're working from this shared idea. And then the next is that audit. To do an audit. So each person goes and does, writes a list of everything that they do, including that, planning for, so often is the mom, the mental load, right? In terms of oh, the jackets aren't going to fit for winter, like let's make sure we order them and we have them ahead of time, all of those tasks down. And even some of the things that I know are also invisible that men do. I mean, not to say that men are always the ones who do the finances, not the case, but even how you do the finances now is different, right? You used to sit, maybe you probably saw your dad sit at the kitchen table or your mom write out the checks, right?
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore,
Yeah.
right? So you might not know or see that somebody is doing that, and it might not be being appreciated, right? And so often just doing this audit is eye-opening. And sometimes it's, then it's like, what do we need and what does this tell us? And sometimes it is about that balance piece, but sometimes it's about gratitude or appreciation, right? In terms of like, wow, I had no idea that you really did so much. Like, thank you for what you do in our household and for our family, right? And that can be such a huge piece. But we don't end there. But then it is about how to make that plan, how to consider how to divide up that labor. Like I said, in our house, we talk about strengths, we do it based on strengths and kind of what it is that we actually enjoy doing. But sometimes it's about ability, right? Like sometimes, I don't know, the lawn trash is really heavy and I cannot carry it all out, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's about ability. Maybe it's about time. Maybe somebody works from home more than the other, so they can take on more tasks. Or maybe it's values based. Like, I think it's really important that my kids have music lessons. My husband's like, yeah, whatever. So, I take on that to, make sure that we have a music teacher and that kids get music lessons. Or sometimes it's a mixed approach, but having these different ideas or different ways of doing these, approaching these tasks can make sure that they happen, right? Can make sure that they're, it's not something that you're like, oh my gosh, I hate doing this. You know what I mean? That we actually find a way that you can find a way to approach it, whether it's, through this shared idea of values or whether it's because something you enjoy doing that, will make it work for your family.
My husband is the cook. He is the family chef. And I have to tell you that has taken a huge load off of me because I'm a horrendous cook. So taking that job is quite helpful. And so we are definitely playing to our strengths here at the Poe household.
I like it. Same. And my husband is the cook.
Oh, great. That's awesome. So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about, the whole working mom and ambition conversation, because for me, it reached its peak in 2012 when my kids were ages 4 to 7. And when Anne Marie Slaughter wrote an article called Why Women Still Can't Have It All. And at the time, it caused this huge hullabaloo, or I don't know the word is. It caused a lot of chaos in the media. People were talking about it. It's making the assumptions, well, why can't we have it all? And I think ultimately what she ended up saying is many years later, is she said she should have called it Why Working Moms Need Better Choices to Make It to the Top. Mm-hmm. And the net of the conversation is that, yes, women can have it all. Depends on the job. Depends on your income level, depends on your ability to pay for childcare, depends on if you have a supportive, active partner at home. And gee, wouldn't it be great if school schedules actually matched work schedules, right?
Yes.
So at the time, Slaughter actually thought that having women in the White House may start to change perceptions of women in the workplace. But it's 13 years later, and that hasn't happened. And as you mentioned, now women still only make up 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs. We talked about 1% of ad agency owners are women, which is very low. Women make up 43% of US government positions, but just 28% are members of Congress. And so has anything really changed since 13 years ago in your mind?
In the big picture, no. I think no. I do think in the short term, kind of the pandemic has changed so much about the way that we work and the way that companies are looking at employees and the support that they need. So I do think that, and that came about though because women left, because of the she-cession, because they were willing to walk away, and that sort of made companies sort of sit up and take notice. And McKinsey and Deloitte and all of these big companies started doing research on women and started having these focused research studies on women and the impact of, what work is like for them and what they need. So I am starting to see these small changes happening, that there is an awareness of what women have to do in order to just get in the door, right? And just get to work. And so I think that it is small change, but it is coming together. And I think that this is why actually kind of where the homework program came from is that because I was seeing that there was progress at work. Again, it's not done. We're not finished. Like there's still a long way to go, but it was not happening as successfully at home. Even with having these men who are amazing supporters, feminists who want to help women move forward, right? Even in that case, even at home, they weren't doing it. And I think so much of it is because women aren't willing to walk away from their families and just say like, no, you do it. You know what I mean? They don't want their kids to go through that. They want their kids to have everything, right? And so that is sort of where I was like, okay, we're not done at work, but there is signs of progress, and it wasn't feeling the same way at home. And so how do we move those conversations forward without having to walk away? Which I think is interesting, about how to have those conversations, because there are people who say we won't move forward at work until we have home, equity at home.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I agree with that, because I do think we've made progress at work. How do we get home to sort of move forward? But for sure, it needs to be in conjunction to move culture forward, right? And how can we continue to move forward in that way?
So the reason we actually met is you slipped into my comments on Instagram when I posted that stat that only 1% of women own ad agencies in the US. You have your own theories as to why that is based on your own client base. Can you talk to me about that?
Yes, I have women who are from, across so many different industries, so many different backgrounds, so many different directions they want to go. But if I were to see as many as I have in any one group, it would definitely be those who come from agencies, who come from that background of specifically, not necessarily some marketing, yes, but specifically the ones who come from agencies are the ones who really struggle after they have kids. And they say, this is not the world that I want to go back to. It is too difficult to manage that work-life balance with the agency culture and the agency style. Back to Ashley wanting to close her computer at 5 p.m. and be done with work for the day and be able to focus on her family for the evening. that is really hard with agency life. And I understand, my background is in marketing communications as well. So I understand, and I can support them. And so I'm finding from these women that they are wanting, not again, that they don't love what they're doing, but the lifestyle isn't conducive. And so they're looking to go in different directions with that. And so maybe that they want to go in-house like Ashley did. Maybe they want to be more purpose-driven, with the companies or the brands that they work with, provide more impact, again, kind of the same purpose-driven, impact driven, or they want to try something else, do something new kind of skill. But for sure, there is something tough about that agency model, or at least as they had experienced it. And so that's why I actually loved your stat, because I was thinking about back to those entrepreneurs and women who are starting their own business because they're not seeing what it is that they want, out there. So they're creating their own structure. So I was like, yes, let women create their own agencies that work for women. And so that they're not having this brain drain, and that they're actually able to support an environment that works for moms and women to actually succeed. How amazing would that be?
That would absolutely be amazing. And I hope we make some good progress on that. So what other tips do you have for working moms that you can provide based on your experience?
Okay, so I have two. One of them is, I think that we moms are so hard on ourselves so often. And I think it's because we're holding ourselves to impossible standards, right? Not only in terms of that, work like you don't have kids and mother like you don't have a job, not even that pain alone, but also based on these models of what, we saw probably our moms do, right? Whether our moms worked and got food on the table still every night, or whether, our moms didn't work and still had dinner on the table every night. So often we are holding ourselves to that expectation. And life is different now, right, than it was for our moms, right? Not only do we have phones that kind of make our work somewhat 24/7, but also the way we raise kids is different, in terms of so much about the way we were raised was to be shaped. And the way that we raise kids now is to help them, support them into who they're going to be, right? It's a bit different. So I think that there's a big piece of letting go of those models. Like they don't work for us. They're not serving us. And instead create our own models, living by our own values and what works for us and for our family. That I think can let us all just collectively have a sigh of relief and start enjoying more of our lives and all of these things that we've built so that we could enjoy. Let's enjoy them, right? Through letting go of those models. And then my second tip would be that I wish there were, but there's no magic pill or silver bullet that makes this all just magically easier, that just like wake up tomorrow and it's all, it all just works perfectly. If that were the case. But I do think that doing this kind of work and being really clear on our values and being really clear on what direction we're going is really worth it. It is so worth it because we are showing our kids every day what it means to be an adult, be a working mom, right? And we want them to know that they can create that life that they want. They can be happy, right? They can live in a house that's equitable. They can, and have a job that they love that is not their whole lives, that they, can really move the world forward, right? And I think that's the goal for so many of us, right? We want to leave the world better than we found it. And by showing our kids, and we can create a higher baseline for them, that we can do that. And so just thinking about I don't have time to do this kind of work. I don't have time, but think about what you're showing your kids. And I think that you will find time to help them and just help them see what it could be like.
So that makes me laugh because when I launched my podcast, one of my teenage sons came to me and said, you need to make your social media private because my friends are seeing your posts and they're liking them and following you. And I was like, well, that's just the greatest compliment ever. So some of my fans on my podcast are 16 to 18-year-old boys that are my son's friends' kids who follow what I do. And I think that's funny if your kid, that's hitting a nerve, right? Where they care enough to see that what their friend's mom is actually doing or makes a lot of sense. So that makes me laugh.
I love it. That's so cool.
So how can people find you? How can they contact you if they want to learn more about working with you?
My website is probably the best way. And on my website, you can also sign up for my newsletter, not too often, twice a month. No, not a huge time commitment, I promise. I know what it's like to be a busy working mom. So the website is www.plancreatively.com. I'm on Instagram, plancreatively8, LinkedIn under my name, and I am on Facebook as well, Plan Creatively. So you can find me almost all the normal places. And I love to hear from moms and hear what it is their challenges are and what it is that they're facing. And trying to make their lives better. Like, let's enjoy this life. We have one.
Wonderful. I'll make sure that we put your contact information on our website as part of the episode recap, and of course to tag you on social posts. I just want to promote two podcasts that I've done that also talk about working moms. One of them is called Power Moms. It's a book written by Joan Lublin, How Executive Mothers Navigate Work and Life. Huge recommendation. Joanne is just fantastic. So please listen to that podcast on Two Marketing Moms. And the other one that's just as great, it's called Slay Like a Mother, How to Destroy What's Holding You Back So You Can Live the Life You Want by Catherine Winch. Another highly strong recommended read, and check out twomarketingmoms.com to learn more. Thank you so much for the conversation today, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.